Thank you. How many of you know a bit about conversational AI? A bit? How about AI? More. More know about AI than conversational AI. Yeah, so my name is Matti Toivonen and thanks for having me here speaking today about conversational AI and as you can read from the board, we are not selling chatbots, and what we'll be discussing today is something beyond those chatbots, meaning practically the conversational AI and next generation service bots. We'll do it like that. Front.ai is a relatively new company. Our background is that we are a spin-off company from Digital Workforce, which is the biggest robotic process automation vendor in Europe. And practically what Digital Workforce found out was that in order for the RPA to perform its tasks, it needs to have a very structured input. And the fact of life is that majority of the data in the world is actually unstructured. So the robots cannot work if they won't get the structured input. And early this year and late last year, we started to investigate that how we could translate this unstructured data into the structured form, so that the bots would actually the robots could actually be working, and did some investigation, and at the same time decided that maybe this is actually a worth of a new company rather than going in within the Digital Workforce. So that was the born history of us, and currently there is 3 founding members, me, Jari Annala in front, and Tyko Niemi also on the front, and Riitta has maybe been here speaking a bit about something as well. She's running our academy for the bot whisperers, which you can see the first year class here represented in the picture. And my background is that for the last years I've been managing different types of customer service organizations and customer experience. So worked for the last 3 years as a service director for Ticketmaster Finland, the largest ticket selling company, and before that one, Itella Information and Opus Capita. So my background is heavily on the customer service and domain knowledge about the actual challenge that we have here. But what do we do is that we deliver these next generation artificial intelligence based service bots, which can understand 22 languages. So we have partnered with Boost AI, a Norwegian company who has created the first package or productized deep learning neural network that can natively understand all the Nordic languages, which is of course really important thing for us. So among those 22 languages, we do have the 22, so Finnish and Swedish and Norwegian and Danish languages, which is pretty unique. Even though we do have this basic grammar or basic language model teach to the bot as a default, it can quite nicely understand different dialects and different typing mistakes, which are really typical for the instant messaging type of platforms or messaging platforms. And what we believe is that we can automate, let's say, roughly 50 incoming requests in the customer service processes. And what we mean is that those are basically the typical consumer service problems or whatever type of service that you can think of, like that engage between the customer and different companies, and also internal processes. And I will come back to this later on, but But of course, these new bots are built to integrate on the backend systems, and with strong authentication, we can more and more empower the end user to use the backend systems within the natural language context. The implementation takes practically only weeks, so we are not talking about something that we would start to build from the scratch. So everything is, there is already a ready-made product, which will then be only configured for the client purposes, which is, of course, when we are talking about AI, that's a bit different typically, which I understand as an AI product doesn't practically exist. So we start from gathering the data and then doing some different analysis on that one. But what we are talking about here is actually a product that exists already by now, and it just means a little bit of configuration and then the actual teaching itself. And coming back to that one, maybe the most amazing thing is that you don't need to be a PhD in data science in order to do the teaching of the bot or the AI. You can manage to do that with only 1.5 days or 1 day's online course. So the UIs is so intuitive, and everybody, practically everyone who understands what the business is about and what the service processes are about can do the teaching and can master the AI within this system. Everything comes from cloud, and maybe the biggest point here is that what we are selling is a one platform. It's truly an enterprise architecture where the bot has practically unlimited capacity. The resolution of the bot and the NLP and NLU algorithms will allow you to run, or you only need to have one bot for different purposes. So you don't need to have several bots one for each purpose, which has been kind of like a common de facto standard for the earlier generation bots in the market. So why is this important? And one of the things is that I've analyzed the world we are living in, and I would say that we are living in somewhat, let's say, post-digitalization era at the moment. And the digitalization has changed us as humans quite dramatically. And quite often we don't look back and see those things, that what has actually happened. And if you think of yourself, for instance, well, this is practically a wrong forum to ask this, but if I ask the same question here and there, my first question would be in the audience that how many of you use as the main communication tool between your families and friends something like WhatsApp? Please raise your hand. All of you. One didn't admit. so 99%. So if you think 10 years back, that was a bit different. So what does this tell us is that instant messaging has become the de facto standard between human-to-human communication. And it's really dangerous to think that this type of instant messaging channels would not impact businesses as such. Why wouldn't we want to communicate with businesses with the same media that we communicate between human to human? So the channels that the enterprises need to think when they think about the customer service processes has changed quite dramatically. And if you look at the amounts of the messages sent within these platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, WeChat, and so on, what you can see year after year is an exponential growth. So year after year, the volume of messages sent will break the roof. So there is a clear change happening and has already happened when we think about the communication itself. Also now, of course, that's nothing new, but we have whole our lives here. This is constantly with us. We tend to do everything with the mobile phone nowadays. So the channel preference is typically a mobile phone and a digital channel first. And this has created a setup where the services need to be constantly available 24/7. We want to consume the services when we have the time, not when the store is open or the opening hours of the service unit are. And one of the biggest changes for us as human beings has become that we have become really impatient. So whatever service is not enough, so we can't practically stand any queues or delays in the services nowadays. And at the same time, the price and the availability of products or services have become irrelevant. So the service has more key impact on the decisions that we do. And if you look at this the other way around, what does this then mean to the organization that is providing the services? Is that they need to have some tools in order to meet those changed customer demands. Meaning that you need to create somehow 24/7 availability. You need to create a service environment where none of the end users will get any type of queues or delays. And what do you have for options to create that? That's practically just hiring more people and staffing the service operations a bit differently. But the fact is that typically these type of functions are on really high cost pressure. So there is no way that with just adding more human power, the business case would be anyhow positive. So, of course, one of the answers for this one is conversational AI. And as we spoke a little bit, is that if you think of the amount of data that we have, practically 80% of the data we share and we send out is unstructured, meaning all the things that we speak, all the things that we send out and we message. And that is, of course, something that you can't really think that you could use as a source of automation without having something like natural language processing and understanding behind it. And if you think of it moreover, and let's come back to the customer service context, which is practically a communication function. So all the customer service processes are, let's say, by nature, a communication processes where customers or consumers will communicate between enterprises and so on. So this kind of like explains why those customer service processes typically have very little automation built into the processes. And of course, then the way we communicate can be really different if we compare like generations or cultures, different languages, dialects, and so on. So there needs to be a quite powerful algorithms in order to break this down. So what do we do is that we will allow the customers to use their natural language to do those service processes in whichever way they want to do that. And into the middle, we will have the conversational AI, which main purpose is to understand the customer intent from the natural language sent to the organization. And when the intent is being understood, for the intent, we have the automation process defined on the back end. And about 30% of all customer service communication and the inbound cases, those are more or less informational. Customers asking for more information, where do I find this, or how should I do this, and so on, which is completely trivial to the conversational AI itself to solve. So you can you can create a answer into the backend saying that, okay, on this type of case, you should perform something like this or direct the customer into the right information and the right place and so on and so on. But then, these were half in English and half in Finnish. Okay, so 30% informational. And then when we go deeper on, when we add strong authentication into the picture, meaning that then we know who the customer is, and we can call in the backend systems through the APIs or then throughout a software robot, and we will go transactionals with the backend systems. We can increase the automation percent to about 50%. And of course here, the world is unlimited practically, because you can do whatever type of request if you know who the customer are, and you can interpret the customer's intent, and you have the access for the backend systems. And this is not about bots versus humans. It's humans and bots together. So the aim is to put all the routine tasks that typically tend to appear the most into the bots, and then move the work that actually have some added value for human being to handle into the human workforce. And of course, one of the advantages is that we don't route those cases into the human beings, let's say randomly, but while we know the intent and what the customer is after, we can know exactly which team we want to contact and what are the information that we typically need for those cases. So the routing is also handled somewhat intelligently. How many of you are Finnish by nature? Okay, because one of the points is, of course, that you might think that why is this so? What is the uniqueness here? And one of the uniqueness is actually the small language areas where we are. So meaning like Finnish. And of course, that's super important for us because we now focus on the Nordic areas and the Nordic countries on the business-wise. But Finnish is one of the most difficult languages in the world if you are not born in Finland and you are not native Finnish. And here you can see some categorizations that we are on category 4, that how long does it take for English native speaking person to understand the language. And then there are some cases from the media that Finland might be the most difficult language to learn. And that's of course for the human beings, but of course coming back to the fact that if it's difficult for humans, it's most likely difficult for computers as well. And one of the reasons why we have this is of course the masses of conjugations. If you think the English word of auto, which is either car or cars, we have some other conjunctions as well. And this is not all, this is just a sample list. And we have a tendency to put words together, forming compound words, which is not that typical in the other languages. And when 2 words is not enough, we put 3 words together, and so on and so on. So just to highlight some of the characteristics is that if we add all of these together, the number of different alternatives is rather high. And for me, if you ask me that what is AI and what is not AI, I would say that AI is not rule-based system. And if you think that you would try to manage the language with some sort of a rule-based systems, maybe it would be at least theoretically possible. But then when we think of all the rest of the cases, like how should you maintain the system and so on, it becomes practically impossible. So we do have really powerful NLP functions within the system, and how we handle this is that before putting the actual sentences into the neural network, we will handle all the sentences and all the communications with the NLP and NLU processes, which then kind of like simplifies and does cleanup for the system. And for instance, on this case, it's a small sample of how we can use the stemming functions here and formulate each of the words into their origin, or let's say kind of like a standard form, without losing the semantic meaning within the whole sentence. So, for instance, we are not pushing into the neural network, or we only push into the neural network the full sentences, meaning that the semantic and contextual understanding of the sentence will remain the same. The word order will remain as it was in the beginning, which is pretty important. For instance, if you are asking something that how much does it cost to go from Helsinki to Turku, or when does the next train leave to Helsinki to Turku? So the order of the two cities is kind of important on that sense. Yeah, and if we look a bit about how has the service bots or the bots themselves, let's say chatbots, developed, and let's say that we started off with these button bots where someone had already defined all the processes behind, and then you had 4 or 5 options, and then you clicked one, and then you had some other options. You couldn't use the natural language at all, or maybe somehow it had some sort of a search within that one, and then it found out which button you were willing to press if you just write it on a natural language. And then we ended up allowing a bit of the natural language, but still going heavily with a word-based matching, like practically using some of the keywords and trying to identify from the sentences what would be the keyword, and then match that into some sort of a knowledge base, including excluding words. Worked somewhat, but of course didn't understand all the differences and tricks with the language differentiations, and especially Finnish language was really hard. And now we have moved into using the AI on this field as well, allowing the users to use the native languages. And of course, then on this side, that's just the technology, how to understand the end user, but customers are clearly looking for something more, meaning that the bots will have a creator role in their businesses in future. And what do we mean by this is that the coverage of the total, let's say the amount that we have been teaching the bot will increase, so the amount of intent will increase significantly. The bots will know more and more about different types of things within the organization. It's nowadays not anymore just a small window in the right hand side of the browser where you just type something in. We need to create the same or offer the same service from different types of social media channels, like internally, like Microsoft Teams, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger. The bot needs to be available on those channels as well as in voice channel, which I will show you a small demo afterwards. So the technology, how the bots have been created, has changed, but also we need to tackle at the same time the change of the of the customers and the customer demand change, and that is exactly what we do with the enterprise level bots. But I will show you now a short video. I had options to pick from either Finnish or Swedish video because we don't have this in English, so I picked Swedish. So if you want to see the Finnish video, you can check it from our YouTube channel. I think that should be somewhere over there. But yeah, so the next demo is about voice recognition, which is created above the normal bot here. So there is nothing special on that sense to done on the actual AI learning. So it's just yet another channel for the bot to operate. And we've done this within the GSM network, which has 12 times weaker sound quality than we have, for instance, like Siri or Amazon Alexa, because it uses the GSM thing and there is constant noise behind of that one. So keep that in mind when you when you see what is going on.
Hej. Hur kan jag hjälpa dig?
Vad har ni för olika abonnemang?
Vi har allt du behöver. Vi har följande abonnemang. Alternativ 1. 4G Unlimited Allt. Alternativ 2. 5G Unlimited Galaxy. Alternativ 3. Kontantkort i Thomas. Vänligen tala efter signalen.
Vad är 5G Unlimited Galaxy?
Front.ai 5G Unlimited Galaxy är det ultimata mobilabonnemanget som bara Facit-routers har haft. Nu är denna slutna anslutning tillgänglig för människor och fungerar över hela galaxen, inklusive Gotland. Om du vill veta mer kan du fråga mig om priset.
Vad kostar det?
Front.ai 5G Unlimited Galaxy är billig och fungerar med ljusets hastighet och det är snabbt. Månadspriset på 299 kronor inkluderar obegränsade samtal, obegränsade sms, obegränsad supersnabb roaming.
Tack!
Yeah, so there you could see that how the voice can be used as a way of guiding the bot forward. The same way you can type in and quite nice things, and maybe that will show you the power of the actual AI behind it, because it's not that easy to get exactly from GSM network really correctly that how people are speaking and then translate that into the text, and then the text should be still processed within NLP and NLU processes, but as said, it works like magic in many ways. We created some guides for you. If you want to go and check, please visit our website and you can have the downloads over there. That's pretty much it. I will now leave it for your questions, and then let's see if we have, after the questions, some time for a brief demo of the system. Thank you.